Hi, I'm Brian, and I'm building this 38-foot sailboat here behind me. Work is progressing on it, but on this episode we're not going to focus on that. We're going to turn our attention to that next episode. But for this one, we're going to look at the finish of the restoration of my 26-foot Thunderbird sailboat. And we managed to get the tow rails and the windows and all the hardware on, get it launched, get the mast up, go out for a couple of sails, as it was late August when we managed to get it launched. I also give you a little update on the grass, and also a little bit about the destruction and power outage that we had during post-tropical storm Fiona here in the island. So Dad was here yesterday. We bent the tow rail here into place, and we have drilled and stuck an occasional screw in, as you can see, but all the rest do need to be drilled. Then I need to take them all off and epoxy the screw holes just to seal them, and then re-drill them as needed. I'm thinking I just might use the thinned epoxy that'll soak into the wood rather than actually filling it, which will still seal it, and then I'll have to reapply these. Now, I also have a whole nother pile of bolts and nuts and screws and hardware to go on, so a lot of fun happening today. So I'm getting ready to put my tow rails back on with my dad's help, but what I'm going to use is use Sikaflex on the bottom here to seal it. When I took these off, I had noticed there'd been a lot of water and dirt get in there over the years, so I'm going to make sure it's sealed, and then I'm going to put some of the Sikaflex 291 on every screw hole before I put the screws in, which will allow it to hopefully seal tight. As you seen the other day, I already sealed the holes with thinned epoxy, so it should be good to go. So I have my plexiglass windows here that I'm going to be mounting on the outside. I've got all my marks for where my screw holes are going to go through, and I got both glasses for the port and starboard side lined up here with these 4 holes. And basically what I'm going to do now, as soon as I add my battery to the drill, is I am going to drill these holes through here, so then I can drill them through the wall of my cabin and epoxy the holes. Oh, here we go. There, with all the holes drilled now, I just have to fill them with a thinned epoxy to seal them, and then we should be ready to install the windows. So I have the holes all drilled for my windows. I have also the holes drilled for the window here. Just gotta peel the plastic. And now I'll be ready to put my butyl tape on here and then put the bolts in.
So I have the butyl all on there. You notice it doesn't come to the edge, but once it's tightened down, it actually squeezes out. So that's good. And now what I have to do is put a little bit of butyl around the head of each and every bolt that I put in. So to do that, I'm just going to take the bolt and put a couple of wraps around, and that again will squeeze out and I'll be able to clean it off. The important thing here is whenever this is being put in, to minimize the amount that the bolt head turns. So I'm actually here on the outside holding them in place, and Dad's here on the inside tightening them. What I'm doing is I'm putting in 4 bolts here just to line up with it, and because of the butyl tape, they just need a little bit of extra loving care to drive them in. And again, peel this plastic off. You wouldn't want this underneath the bolts, otherwise it would cause a leak. And this just allows me to make sure that everything is more or less in place. It's a good thing this is pretty much unbreakable. Swinging the hammer for some awkward positions does occasionally manage to hit this plexiglass. So as you can see, I got all the bolts in. Dad's inside there putting the nuts on. So we've starting to tighten them down, and plexiglass is a little bowed. What's going to happen over time, that will actually squeeze back in and it'll be nice and straight. So what I'm doing, I'm holding this, hopefully snugs them in. Just fill in the holes so I can drill them later.
Last hole I gotta drill before I can start filling, and of course it's one of the most awkward holes to get to. Well, that's done. Now I just got to clean up the boat and be able to start filling the holes. So I'm just finishing mixing up some epoxy, which I thinned with some methyl hydrate or alcohol to be able to
coat out all the screw holes. I have a syringe to be able to inject into a number of the screw holes, and then the ones that go all the way through, I've got a nice little brush to be able to paint them. Well, I was overly confident in the first batch of epoxy I mixed up. Unfortunately, it overheated and hardened while still in the cup. So you can see that it all bubbled up and basically hard as a, well, sponge now, rock whenever it's done drying. So I wasted a little bit of epoxy, but it's called learning. Well, I figured before I put the hardware back on that I would give it a little bit of a sand. I started already, but as you can see, the buildup of corrosion on the bottom would make it very hard to be able to seal it. So what I'm doing is using some sandpaper here, sanding it, and making it a lot nicer, as you can see. Got Dad here doing a polishing job. So the threshold where my drop boards go to shut off the cabin from the cockpit, whenever I took it out, it broke. So I'm got a new piece of wood here, and I'm going to recreate what was here to be able to replace it. So I got the two notches cut in. One of them I was able to cut on the bandsaw. The other one I had to do by hand because the table doesn't tip the opposite direction. So a little bit more challenging there, but a little bit of sanding. They should all look good and ready to be put in place. So I'm just here sanding my wood, the exposed wood, my grab rails, and my tiller. I had varnished them previously, but I found that broke down too quickly. And so I'm moving to teak oil, which is just an oil that you apply to the outside of them, and it gets sucked into the wood. It helps preserve it from water ingress and from rotting away. And it will have to be applied more often, but it's a relatively quick process. All you got to do is wet a rag down and give it a wipe. So it is going to darken them down. So let's get at this, see what they'll look like.
There she's coming. The unveiling.
That table got to be moved?
I think probably it does.
Yeah, just pull it out.
There we are. Yeah.
there it is, out and about, ready to go back in the water. Just a couple of little things left to do, a little bit of cleanup of the butyl tape and a few other little bits and pieces to finish. So I'm here in the water. I did get my mast on. I didn't record any of that, but I got some of my stays on. But unfortunately, the stays that run back to these chain plates are just a little short. So I'm going to have to find a way to extend this chain plate up and get that to attach. It doesn't take a whole lot of weight. The wire's at tension to about 1,000 pounds. So there is a way to extend these. I have to figure that out, and or figure out a way to connect that to this. The other thing, finally got out for my first sail here, a great big race. Unfortunately, absolutely no wind, so we're just all basically jammed up into a pile here. But it's great getting back on the water.
Yes, it is.
Well, the last video I just planted the grass. It's looking good for the most part. There's one little spot where some of the newer soil probably didn't have quite as much nutrients in it as the stuff that we had dug up here. So it's a little bit thinner on the ground, as you can see, but it is coming in slowly. So I'll just let it continue to grow, and it should thicken out over the next couple of years. I'll be happy. So tropical storm, or post-tropical storm Fiona has come through and very nicely laid a whole bunch of trees down for me. I actually just got power back tonight, which is day 12 after Fiona. So that has put a little bit of a crimp into my boat building, as without power it's awful hard to plane the keelson down to size and things like that. But I got power back tonight, so things are looking up and I'll be able to continue on.
If you enjoyed this video, subscribe, like, and leave a comment.